Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Thursday, May 2nd. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you. On this episode, we dig into some news and notes from around the league. We have injury updates. We have a lingering question that a few folks have been asking in Discord. I think Braves fans have wondered a bit about it. Where is the power for Ronald Acuña Jr. this season? We'll dig into that. We got some Project Prospect as well, thanks to a few recent debuts. We've got Paul Skenes' watch in full effect. We'll talk about his latest outing at AAA. And we got a few weekend waiver preview names to discuss later on in this episode. If you haven't joined already, join the Discord. You can do that using the link in the show description. Eno, how's it going for you on this Thursday?
It's going good. Got a piece up about Sonny Gray and his evolution of his pitches. That was kind of fun to write because, he's thrown a lot of different breaking balls. And in order to even talk about them, you kind of have to call it things that he doesn't call them, he's been famously said like, oh, it's not a sweeper, it's a slider. Well, I have to differentiate it from your other slider. So let's call it a sweeper. I guess maybe in his head, it's a little bit more slider and cutter. But it does sweep a lot. So it was still useful to kind of call it a sweeper. He's the breaking ball king.
One thing I've learned, though, just from the Friday shows we've done with Trevor, and I think from last week's conversation with Adam Ottavino, is that some of the reasoning behind pitchers calling their pitch a certain thing is almost like a cue to themselves for how they grip it, how they let it go. Like those things are kind of important to them from like a mental standpoint, because if you change something in your head, you might change something with your hand or your fingers or your elbow, and then you create new problems for yourself. So it's easy for us to just measure them like very, very clearly and say, this is definitely a sweeper. But I finally understand another reason why there might be disagreement about what a pitch actually is.
Yeah, and it has a direct application of the story, which is that I think it makes sense for him to call it a slider because he's actually trying to throw it harder. And when he was trying to chase movement, it was a lesser pitch. When he was trying to chase sweep, it was a lesser pitch. Now that he's trying to throw it harder, it's a better pitch. So maybe he wants to call it a slider to keep from chasing the sweep.
Yeah, what you call things and how you measure things, very important. You might remember on the show from Wednesday, I said that Wisconsin has more lakes than Minnesota. And I wasn't wrong based on where I heard it. I heard it on the radio one morning. It was just part of the news. I was driving
Wisconsin
to work
radio
years ago. It was like Wisconsin public radio. I was trying to be a better human, listen to some news on the way to work instead of music or a podcast or whatever. And I remember that sticking in my head, and someone quickly pointed out this morning, well, Wisconsin counts lakes differently, and that has been verified as a big part of why. So if you care, and you don't, if you care, Minnesota DNR says a lake must cover at least 10 acres of land to be considered a lake. In Wisconsin, there's no minimum. So you could have a pond on a farm, and that would be classified as a lake by the DNR. So by that measure, Wisconsin does have more lakes than Minnesota. But if you use the 10-acre requirement, Wisconsin, I think there's about half as many lakes that size in Wisconsin. So there you go.
Yeah,
everything you ever wanted to know about lakes in two states you've probably never been to.
The weirdest lake thing for me was hearing recently that there are no nature-made lakes in Georgia, because I remember, being in those lakes.
They're all man-made lakes?
They were all man-made. I also remember kind of gross bottoms. And I even learned to scuba dive in Lake Lanier in Georgia. And all I saw at the bottom was beer cans, like tires, like someone's cooler that fell off their boat. It was a great preparation for scuba diving in Jamaica and Hawaii.
I'm sure you'll find some interesting things at the bottom of some of the smaller lakes of Wisconsin. I actually don't want to go look and see what's down there. Hey, I wasn't going there, but yeah, also that. Let's get to some baseball news you should know, because that's probably why you're here. Grayson Rodriguez was placed on the IL with shoulder inflammation, and this is a bit of a tricky one because there was no real indication looking at the performance on Monday night as far as velocity, spin, number of pitches. He went over 100 pitches. He pitched really well. Everything looked really good. I think we could maybe put this on the optimistic side for now, just based on those factors that maybe it is just, in fact, a little extra soreness. And after a brief stint on the IL, Grayson Rodriguez might just happen to be okay.
Unfortunately, though, Grayson Rodriguez makes it 9 out of the top 10 leaders in fastball velocity last year that are currently hurt. The only one who's not is Hunter Green. Somebody put him in some bubble wrap right now.
He was hurt a lot last year.
Yes. Yeah. So there is some debate in baseball circles if raw velocity is the source, or if velocity respective to your max velocity is more of the stressor. I tend to think, though, that if you are averaging 98 or 99 on the fastball, that you're probably pretty close to your max too. I mean, the max that we've seen out of a human is like 105, and really the most often max we see is like 102. So if you're sitting 98, 99, you're right up on that. So,
yep, that's it again comes back to how the velo is measured. I think you go back a few decades, you'll find some reports of guys throwing a little harder than that, and I don't even want to go down that road because it's a never-ending argument. The good news on the flip side of this, that we do have John Means returning from the IL as the corresponding move.
Here's a guy who doesn't throw hard, who got hurt.
Yep, it happens to everybody.
Wade Miley, it happens to everybody. You can't just shop in the low velo bin and remain unscathed.
Yeah, and you got Kyle Bradish back. He's actually starting against the Yankees on Thursday. We talked about Bradish earlier in the week and being a little bit reluctant to use him given the difficulty of the matchup.
And the velocity in the minor leagues.
Some
not quite to where he's
that.
been in the past.
But we haven't talked about Means yet, and Means looked really good in his last outing against AAA Gwinnett, which is not a strong AAA lineup. Yes, the Braves are a great major league team. Their AAA lineup leaves a bit to be desired, but 7 innings, like 1 hit, 8
Give me a
Ks.
name that you recognized.
I mean, Forrest Wall, because he used to be a prospect,
Wall,
but he's basically like a pinch runner. I think Yuli Gurriel is down there, but
Yuli Gurriel still bouncing around.
Yeah, but beyond that, it's guys that they're up and down guys, if they're even major leaguers at all at this stage of their careers. So it wasn't like a lineup full of prospects. It was more like the AAA Charlotte lineup than the AAA Norfolk Orioles lineup.
Yeah. That said, he did strike out 26% of the batters he saw on his rehab stint in AAA, which is more than he struck out in his rehab stint last year in AAA. So maybe he'll strike out more than 3.8 batters per 9. I mean, he had a really low strikeout rate last year. That's enough for me to be taking a real wait and see. I want to see major leagues spin rates, usage rates, velos. I want to see some shapes. I want to see something before I am throwing him out there on my team.
Well, good news. He'll get a start this weekend, likely Friday or Saturday in that series against the Reds. So he'll get a chance to get a few more numbers on Means before making that decision. And given the state of pitching in a lot of leagues, I could see Means being one of the more sought after waiver targets on the mound this weekend, which again just speaks to the lack of alternatives, but good signs from him overall on his rehab assignment. Let's talk about Byron Buxton for a moment. He left early on Wednesday with some knee soreness, and that's in the twice surgically repaired knee. I'm definitely worried now because it's been such a long road for him, filled with multiple injuries, and now you've got this major thing that seems to be a problem again. He's going to have an MRI. You look at the results so far this season. We talked about Mike Trout on our show with Britt yesterday, and at least Trout was looking like himself again before the injury. Byron Buxton, not so much, right? We're still looking for the quality of the contact to come all the way back. It's a 4.9% barrel rate through 30 games compared to a 14.6 last year. He's been double-digit barrel rates each of the previous 4 seasons, so that hasn't been there.
Even the raw power is down pretty much.
Yeah, and as a base stealer, last year, 9 for 9 in the 85 games he played. This year, 1 for 3. I mean, it's still limited samples, but something still isn't right, even though Buxton had already appeared in 30 games, or 28 games this year, and was just looking like he was feeling better just by volume of playing time, but not necessarily by getting the results all the way back.
There was also an ump show situation in that game that I was not excited to hear about. The ump told him to get off the field because he was limping his way off the field.
Really?
It's
That's
too
awful.
much.
It's stupid. The umpires, we talked about the Rays Brewers a little bit. Chris Guccione was actually more of an aggressor in that situation than an umpire should be. Like I'll say it again, umpires have a difficult job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think officials in most sports get enough respect. I think that trickles down to youth levels and creates a lot of bad situations. You see stupid videos online of people being jerks to officials all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think part of the job, especially at the professional level, is to not be an aggressor back in a situation. You're the umpire. You have control. If you eject somebody, you should not be walking back at them and yelling back at them. That's just part of the job. Like having to take that to some degree, having to be the bigger person, having to have the cooler head should be part of the job, because I feel like umpires are never disciplined for doing stuff like that. Telling Buxton to get up. He's an injured player. Like what's wrong with you? He's an injured player. Let him take his time getting off the field. There's no tactical benefit here. Like be human about it.
Yeah. I don't understand it. I guess I understand sort of wanting to feel in charge of the field, and that is part of the job. But my sense of leadership aligns maybe a little bit more along what you're saying. Is, speak softly and carry a big stick.
We're all human. Like it's easy to, if someone says some terrible things to you, it's easy to fire back with something. But I just think you have to have the cooler head if you're in that position. But I didn't even know that about the Buxton situation. That's just disappointing. The umpires know a lot about the game. That's why they're there. They love it in some fashion.
Gotta know the Buxton's hurt all the time.
You would know the situation with Buxton. You would know he's had tons of injuries, especially with his knee. So that's just cold to be that way. We mentioned Vaughn Grissom coming back from the IL earlier this week. That got delayed by an illness. He's expected to come back on Friday. So if you activated him for the week, you're going to get a partial week instead of a full week. That's a little bit disappointing. But again, much needed player getting back in the lineup for Boston. We do have some suspensions from that Brewers-Rays game on Tuesday night. Chris Guccione, 0, the umpire, not suspended. But Abner Uribe, 6 games, and he's since been optioned to AAA. Freddie Peralta, 5. He's appealing.
So does he serve them at AAA?
I don't think you can serve your games at AAA. I think you got to serve them.
So he has to come back and serve them?
They're going to have to come up with a time when they'll appeal. Maybe it'll get reduced, and then they'll bring him back up and do it at some time when the bullpen's more rested. I would be my guess there. Jose Siri got 3 games. That was already reduced to 2. He started serving that on Wednesday. Apparently he was sore from the altercation on Tuesday anyway, so he'll be back later this weekend, health permitting. So that was the fallout from all of that. That was a game in which Tyler Black actually debuted. We'll talk about him a little bit later on in our waiver segment. And then on the Rays side, there's actually a few injury updates to pass along. Shane Baz is going to move to AAA for his next rehab progression toward.
He's sort of at the 2-inning level right now.
Yeah, they're bringing him along slowly.
If you follow the kind of Skenes plan, which might be what they're kind of doing, I think you still probably 2 or 3 weeks out. If they're just going to add like 1 inning per start,
probably by the end of the month seems reasonable. And once he's back, I think they can let him work mostly like a regular starter. We got 1 more weekend start at AAA, at least 1 more weekend start for Taj Bradley at Durham as well before he potentially rejoins the rotation. And we already looked at it with Tyler Alexander having a spot. That kind of seems like a path for Bradley to get a look here sooner rather than later. So it might be another guy that, he's probably ticking up in terms of roster rates, but he is absolutely worth looking at as far as stashing him or trying to pick him up right away this weekend where available. Walker Buehler is going to be back for the Dodgers on Monday. He had a nice rehab start at AAA, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 7 hits, 5 Ks, no walks. I think the big question with Buehler is going to be similar to what we were talking about with Bradish. Like, what's the initial trust level given the overall makeup of his rehab assignment, and given that this is the second Tommy John that Buehler's coming back from?
I saw a surprising piece of research that I'd never. I hesitate to say it's 100% lock solid, and we should act accordingly. But down on the farm, Drew Haugen, who does good work, looked at different variables to try and predict Tommy John surgery, and I think you'd be surprised with the most dominant features in his model were: number 1, breaking ball spin.
Breaking ball spin.
Number 2, release extension. Number 3, pitches, that's just sad. That's just sad. 4 is breaking ball. So how many breaking balls? 5 is breaking ball velocity. 6 is release point. 7 is release point. So X and Y. 8 is off-speed velocity. 9 is fastball velocity. So that was surprising to me. Breaking ball spin, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's something that you have to watch with Buehler. Is it's a second Tommy John, and one of the things they do, and this is why Keaton wins kind of fun because he throws his splitter so much. Is Keaton Wynn throws a splitter so much because they take your slider away in Tommy John rehab. The slider is the last thing you're supposed to throw. So Walker Buehler was like a breaking ball spin champion, right? So how much feel will he have for his breaking balls coming off of this rehab is something that I don't think a box score or just a straight velo is going to tell you until you kind of see him. However, he's of a great enough talent. I had him top 50 still. You have to do that looking on your roster if you can.
Yeah, I'm looking at the breakdown of what he was throwing in that last start, and there is an easier way to get the breakdowns for some of the minor league starts. You can go to Savant and click on the game feed tab, and you work from there to go down, change the calendar date, the lower part of the calendar date, click on the level where it says the number of games. When you visit
game feed, there's like going to be games across the top.
Yeah,
ignore those. There's a little calendar icon that's grayed out that doesn't look like it's clickable. But if you click that, and what time did he pitch last?
He pitched on Tuesday, April 30th.
So then you go to April 30th on that calendar. Then you click on MLB and you can go to AAA.
Yep. And then you get all the box scores that are available in that format.
Who's the AAA Dodgers?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City. So then you can go to the Oklahoma City game, player breakdowns, and he pitched against Kenny Rosenberg, and his average fastball velocity was 92.9. But he did throw 18 cutters, 13 sliders, and 13 knuckle curves.
Yeah, pretty kitchen sink sort of mix for Buehler. I think that's pretty interesting. I want to see if that ports over.
None of that top end velo he used to have.
Not yet, anyway. I wonder if it will, if it comes back, when it will come back.
Usually, velo comes back before command.
So you think this is probably closer to what we're going to see when he gets back?
I do kind of. Although there is an aspect of, usually when we study this, we've said that games back predict your fastball velo going back like very well. Like 1 is already a lot of signal. 2 is almost all you need, and 3 is basically can predict your fastball velocity the rest of the season. Mm. The reason those might be major league numbers and not minor league numbers is if you're Walker Buehler, like maybe you're just out there feeling good. You know, maybe you're not like, I need to throw hard. So it wouldn't surprise me if he sat more 93.5 or something, but that's not what he used to be.
Right. It's still having to deal with less velocity than he had before the injury. But it's a 2-start week for Buehler coming back, home against Miami and then road against San Diego. I think that's probably a go. And just about any format, you still take your chances on Buehler having enough in the tank, win probability being pretty high, especially in that first start.
What if he pitches like 7 innings?
7 total?
Yeah.
I mean, that's possible, but they let him go 5 in this last rehab start. So it's not,
that's a good point.
It's not like because of extreme workload concerns.
Yeah. You're just hoping for efficient outings.
Yep. Yeah, it's got to locate well. That's going to be key for Walker Buehler. One question that's been kind of simmering around in Discord and lots of other places is Ronald Acuña Jr.'s power going to show up soon? Because it's weird, right? He had that knee injury during the spring. There was some concern. He got back reasonably quickly. He's stealing a ton of bases. He's 13 for 14 as a base stealer. There's a couple things that are different. The power hasn't been there so far this year, just one homer through 29 games. He's striking out a lot more than he did last year, but more in line with previous career rates, 27.9%. That'd be his highest since the shortened 2020 season. It'd be the highest of any full season that Acuña's ever played in the big leagues. The quality of the contact is somewhat there in the sense that the hard hit rate's still pretty good, 48.1%, but the ground ball rate's up at 53.2%. That would be a career high for him as well. So because he's running so much, I don't really believe the knee is a major problem that's causing the power to be lacking. But seeing that ground ball rate up and seeing that K rate up makes me wonder if he's just being pitched to a lot differently and is in the process of adjusting to it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that last year was like this really great meshing of his approach and what pitchers were trying to do. I went through the heat maps, and last year he got a lot of high fastballs and low breaking balls. It's, an approach. I think we did Acuña on how to pitch to him, right?
We did that on a demo episode.
And that we didn't actually publish. Okay.
Right.
And so, you go high fastballs, low sliders with him, but if you look at the heat map, it wasn't working. Obviously, he had a season for the ages, really. And the wrinkle this year is low four seams, and not low four seams and not high four seams. It's low four seams and high four seams. And one thing that you'll see is a career high in fastball seam. A major jump in four-seam fastballs from 30% last year to 39% now. So, he's seeing a lot more four seams. And I think the approach basically is, if it's high, I've got like a, clear my hands through quick kind of tomahawk swing, right? So if it's high, I'm just getting those hands through and pow, like just a real sat, But if it's low, it's a slider, and then I want to scoop it, right? And I'm going to scoop it, and I'm either going to scoop it for a pull home run if I'm out front, or I'm going to fillet it, right? The fillet is kind of like a scoop swing, but it goes opposite field, What if you try to scoop or fillet a low four seam? I think that turns into a weak grounder. So let's say this is all true, and you're left in the face of like ground ball rate is starting to become like there's signal there, barrel rate, there's signal there now. You have the two things in opposition. One is, here's a strategy that's being imposed on him that you'd think that he could fight his way out of, figure out a new strategy himself, right? But then you also have these numbers that say, well, there's signal here. So I tend to think that he's going to find his way out of this.
It's just sort of my assumption for players this good. Yeah. I think it might just be a reminder that the league tends to try something different when you're really good. Yeah. They spend a lot of time trying to come up with something that will work. It's just a question of how long it will work. I'd be more concerned about the power not coming back if you looked at some of these underlying numbers and saw bigger drops. I mean, we've talked about best speed, right? The average exit velocity of his top half batted balls. Acuña is 21st, tied for 20th actually.
You look at max EV, 113 is very good. It's not
low for him, but it's still very good.
Yeah. It's not as good as like last year he hit a 121. Last year he was like Stanton-esque. This year he's more like top 10, top 15 type guy. It's still hitting the ball really hard. And given his career ground ball rate is 43%, and last year was 49%, this year's 53%, I think he's going to find a way to lift it.
Yeah. Seems like it's only a matter of time before Acuña has one of those months that's like 2.5 months worth of production rolled into one. Let's move on to another topic. You and I have been kicking this around behind the scenes for a couple of weeks now, and it seems like the strength of schedule in baseball, in fantasy baseball in particular, but just in baseball in generally, doesn't necessarily get enough weight put behind it. Like I feel like we have ways of reacting to it. You know, when a bad team wins a series or even sweeps a good team, we kind of joke about it and laugh about it, and that's like one of the areas that comes up in conversation occasionally. But we started to look back at what the Red Sox pitching staff has done so far, and we're wondering, did they make some layups against the easy run of the schedule? Or has there been a massive skills growth? It's possible to have both of those things simultaneously, and that's when you get results that are a lot better than expected. So what did you find when you started digging into the opponents the Red Sox have faced to this point? Is there some truth to the idea that they have had an easy schedule for their pitchers up to this point in the season?
I think so. It's kind of hard to quantify. One of the things that's so hard to quantify about strength of schedule or looking at things is, how good is the team, the opposing team? Yeah, how good is a team is hard enough to figure out, and then to have it be kind of a moving target. Sometimes teams are better at different times of the year. They're different personnel, So how good is a team when you thought going into the season? How good is it going to be the rest of the season? It's a difficult thing, but I will say, also I'm a human being, and I was about to maybe do a victory lap on the Boston Red Sox having one of the best rotations in baseball. That's down a little bit since. And when you look at the schedule, it kind of all makes sense. They did Seattle, Oakland, Angels. I'm going to skip one and I'll come back to it. Angels, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago Cubs, and the Giants. And you know what you see? Zeros and twos and fours and ones in the opposing runs category. Now I'm going to bring in the one series that I did not mention. April 9 through April 11. Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, and Garrett Whitlock pitched. These are pitchers that we think are good now. The Red Sox gave up 7, 7, and 9 runs to the Baltimore Orioles, those 3 games. Those have been their hardest opposition. And yes, they're a good team. I would put forth that none of the rest of the teams are that strong offensively.
No, I think the Orioles are the clear best lineup of the ones the Red Sox have faced on their schedule. And even of all the teams you named, I don't know if you'd mark any of those lineups as more than average in their current form, at least. I mean, there's a chance
Cleveland put up a 10 on them and they're playing pretty well, but I still distrust Cleveland lineups just generally. It's been so long that they haven't been that good,
Yeah, they're a 108 by WRC plus. They don't strike out
now.
Under a 20% K rate for the season. So that's a top 10 offense by WRC plus. The Cubs are a 100. They're again kind of right around average. Angels are a 99. Giants are a 97.
Oakland can't be that high. Seattle can't be that high.
Oakland's an 89 in WRC plus.
Seattle's what, like a 94?
93, and they strike out a lot. 28.7% K rate so far. I think that series in Seattle too.
Yeah,
we got more on some park factors on the Friday
tomorrow.
Show.
Interesting, yeah.
We're going to go full nerd tomorrow. It's going to be awesome.
Going forward, it's kind of an interesting schedule. It's not all hard. But it's harder, I think. At Minnesota, at Atlanta, and I got some pushback with Cutter Crawford, like, oh, dude, like, what are you doing putting the ERA leader in the 60s in your rankings? And I'm like, ERA is not predictive at all, and this is part of the reason why. So Cutter Crawford, I guarantee you, his ERA is not going to be, a 1.5 or whatever it is after he goes to Atlanta. I'm pretty sure. Like, I kind of have a feeling about this. So Minnesota, Atlanta versus Washington. And then I'm going to skip one, and it'll be interesting to come back to this. At St. Louis, it's still a pretty good schedule. Where it gets really hard is May 27th. Baltimore, Detroit is good. Atlanta again. White Sox is good. Philly, Yankees, Toronto, Cincinnati, Toronto. And we don't, again, I'm going to go back. Tampa is the team I skipped. Tampa and Toronto, we should talk about a little bit, because Tampa and Toronto on paper, in terms of projections, are teams you should be afraid of. In terms of projected runs scored going forward, the Blue Jays are still a top 10-ish team. The Rays actually have fallen off already on projected offense, but they should be teams that you might be a little bit worried about, particularly at home. And yet they haven't been playing that way.
So the Rays just on Wednesday got chewed up by Colin Ray, 6 scoreless, 5 Ks. And it was a very watered down Rays lineup that had a flaw, an obvious flaw going into the season. Wander's gone. Like, that's a huge missing part of their offense, but still no Josh Lowe, still no Brandon Lau. Jose Siri didn't play in that game, but also Jose Siri is the kind of player that I think is a net positive when he's in the lineup because he strikes out so much. Like, from a fantasy perspective, you say, I don't mind Jose Siri's playing today, even though he could do some damage. Like, he's helping your pitcher.
He might also
more than he's
go
hurting.
0 for 4 with 3 Ks. So
sure. So you look at that team right now, and they're definitely not playing well. 94 WRC plus.
They have 3 regulars above 100 WRC plus: Isaac Paredes, Ahmed Rosario, and Richie Palacios.
Hey, I'm feeling good about Richie Palacios.
That's right. That was
playing time's ticking up. It's one of my guys.
That was as much your call as anybody's.
Just, follow the logic. If a Cardinal bat ends up in Tampa, good things seem to happen. I don't know how long it's going to work, but I'm going to try it until it stops working. The Jays don't have as much of an excuse. Like, the Rays, you can kind of quickly break down and go, yeah, that's not a lineup to fear. That's actually, the Rays have become a lineup to target and stream against instead of being kind of middle of the pack with all the injuries. That would be my assessment of where they're at right now. The Blue Jays, they fall into this category of a lineup's reputation and even their projection versus reality. And as a team, they underperformed last year. And now we're looking at a month's worth of games where they still haven't been the Blue Jays that many of us expect them to be, right? They got a 96 WRC plus. They're a little bit Cleveland-esque. They still temper strikeouts, 20.6%. So they're going to put balls in play, and they could certainly come in and bab a pitcher on any given day. But here we are through 32 games this season. Vlad Jr., 3 homers, 104 WRC plus. Okay, I'm not really worried about this version of Vlad. And their best everyday player is Justin Turner or Dalton Varsho by what has happened to this point. And then you look at the supporting cast, like Bo Bichette, who's supposed to be a star, has had a bad first month. Mm-hmm. George Springer's been below average by WRC plus so far.
And you have an age component there where it makes you a little nervous.
Yeah, so you start to wonder, okay, I'm not burying Bo. I liked Bo as a 3rd round pick during draft season. I'm not going to completely abandon that, but there's going to be a deep dive probably on Bo Bichette in a future episode. We had questions about some of the other players they were going to lean on, right? They give Ernie Clement and Kevin Biggio and a bunch of guys time that aren't necessarily big leaguers you'd fear. So they have a couple of holes in the lineup already.
There's too many utility guys. I kind of think of IKF, Kevin Biggio, and Ernie Clement as utility guys, and Kevin Kiermaier often hits like a utility guy. I know he's got the defense to keep him in the lineup, but if that's 4 utility guys, this is why Davis Schneider has been playing. This is why Davis Schneider has been interesting to me, and this is why I don't know what happens to Davis Schneider's playing time when Kevin Kiermaier comes back, but it may not be as cut and dry as you expect, which is Kiermaier comes in and Schneider goes down or doesn't play as much.
But even if we look at Vlad, Bo, and Springer and say, sure, they're all going to be at least a little better than they were.
How good is this team?
If they're not a lot better than they were, that's kind of a big deal as far as what you do when Toronto comes up on the schedule. I think.
And I just biffed this, man. I just chose a lot of single start guys over Seth Lugo at Toronto, man. And what did he do?
Good too.
He just came out there and shoved.
Betrayal. Oh, betrayal.
I know, and he's my guy. I just figured, at Toronto, Lugo's peripherals aren't great. This is when Vladdy shows up. One little interesting side point is strength of schedule cuts both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this interesting stat from Thomas Nestico. It's at TJ Stats on Twitter. And he's just looked at opponents' stuff plus. So just what stuff plus the batters have seen. His stuff plus is a little bit different than mine, but I think we align close enough that my results wouldn't be that different if I tabulated them. He has the Angels as number 1, Toronto as having seen the best stuff plus, number 2, Tampa 3. These are teams that we've been wondering, where's the offense?
Yeah.
And I think with the Angels, it's like, well, it's not there.
Well, now Trout's hurt. I mean, like there's also that. And I think
with Toronto and Tampa, like what if they just been facing really good pitchers and that's made them look worse?
I could get on board with that completely. I think this is a really good way to quantify the difficulty for an opposing lineup. Like when you're wondering about a group of underperforming players, this would be something you'd look at and it would help you at least understand or explain what happened. Let's just say the Blue Jays are the team they were last year and not the team they were prior to last year when they were kind of flirting with being one of the best offenses in the league. Because they looked more like a peak Astros lineup that did damage and didn't strike out prior to 2023. Even last year, they were an above average lineup that didn't strike out a lot. They just weren't getting to the long ball as much as we expected them to, and that made them less of a problem to match up against. So
yeah, I mean, like an 8th best team with a 107 WRC plus, and then you put this also into context what we were talking to earlier, what I was talking about in terms of like how teams ebb and flow. Mm-hmm. So I think let's say they're a true talent 107 WRC plus team. That's what they were last year. Let's say they're 105 this year, right?
It's still good. It's probably a top 10 lineup.
People oscillate around a mean. Each player does, right? Like if you look at rolling WOBA charts or like rolling production charts, you'll see it's like an EKG. Boop, 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 up and down, up and up and up and down, right?
Yeah, it's amplitude. There's waves. Yeah.
There's waves. And we generally say the middle of that amplitude is the thing. So now let's take all of these EKGs on a team, put them next to each other. All it's going to do is amplify. It's actually gonna, in some ways, I think, soften it, right? Because if one guy's hot, another guy's not, they cancel out, right? So there'll be some softening, but there'll still be an oscillation around a mean. So if you think they're a 105 WRC plus team, it is totally possible that for the next 2 weeks, they are a below average, or even for a month, they are a below average offensive team. Riding that wave, though, and saying, I'm going to start Seth Lugo because they look like a below average team right now, it's still risky.
Oh, it's definitely risky. I mean, the top 5 teams right now, just for the first month of the season by WRC plus, Dodgers, Brewers, Braves, Orioles, Astros. There's one of those teams that you don't expect to be in there. I mean, like, I'm not fearing the Brewers lineup.
Right.
I watch them every day, and I'm like, am I not throwing an average pitcher against them?
Especially not in Milwaukee, where the home run rate is a little bit influenced.
Especially with Yelich down too. I mean, you take the best hitter out of a lot of lineups, they can go from above average to average pretty quickly if they're only a shade above. They're well above right now at 118 for WRC plus. I doubt they're
what's
anywhere
the
near
over
that.
under the rest of the season for that offense? I can give you
probably a 100 even would be like a good outcome the rest of the way, and then they'd still finish above average for the season. They'd be like a 103 or 104 for the year.
Yes, and runs scored per game projection on Fangraphs says the Brewers have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th best offense going forward. So that's a little bit lower than, no, you just said 100.
Yeah, I said 100 the rest of the way, and they end up a little higher because of the good start. But
that means you could throw a pitcher against the Brewers despite them being one of the second best offense in the league so far.
Well, like what else would matter in a matchup though? What has the Brewers faced less stuff plus? Have they faced easier competition? Have they benefited from their schedule? Is that Is that the explanation? Is that how they've done it?
That's an interesting. I wonder if.
And while you're looking into that, like think about the teams that projections don't usually like. Rays, Brewers, like they're going to be kind of funky teams that would still be rest of season under projected relative to actual improvement because the projections are going to be generally slow to catch up.
Yeah, I was hoping that maybe down thread he'd done some more into it, but Vlad Guerrero Jr. has himself faced the best stuff plus in the big leagues, and Randy Arozarena, who's really struggling, has seen the third best. So
I think that matters. I think there's some weight to that.
Yeah, I would. I will try to maybe watch on Twitter. I'll put it maybe in Discord. I'll ask for the opposite of this. Which teams have benefited from seeing the worst stuff? I think that would also be interesting to see if the Brewers are on that list.
I'll try to put this in the reverse mailbag channel on the Discord, but what factors are you, the listeners, what are you looking at when you're trying to determine strength of schedule for upcoming matchups, be that for pickups, be that for who to sit, who to start? Because I think this is an area where there's still some opportunity. I know some tools out there that try to cut through it.
Razzball's good. Yeah. I will look at Razzball. I have to say, I do it by feel.
I don't know. I mean, I think on some level you could do well, but maybe you could do better if you had feel plus information. It's just a question of what information you want to have and how reliable is that information.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fed by information all the time. So
right, yeah, you're not without information. Your gut is backed, it's fed by some information.
I'm staring at these numbers all the time, but yeah, it's a tough one. I made the wrong choice with Seth Lugo this week.
So we're going to merge Project Prospect and our weekend waiver preview together on this episode for the most part because many of these players are going to be targets over the weekend. I know you and I talked about him in draft and hold season. Tyler Black is up for the Brewers. He was promoted on the day of the fracas at American Family Field, we'll call it. Tyler Black's a strange player in the sense that he doesn't necessarily have a good defensive position, but he's very patient. He has some power. He has a lot of speed. And this is a team that, while it's performed very well so far, does have an opportunity to get better at first base in particular. Jake Bauers has been very good defensively, but I don't think Jake Bauers is hitting enough for the Brewers to say, we're okay getting great defense from this spot. We're seeing a 38.2% K rate, lower walk rate than last season, less hard contact than last season. So you have to wonder if this is the opportunity for Tyler Black to carve out at least a big side platoon role. Maybe he'd be the kind of guy that loses some, late inning plate appearances here and there as a defensive replacement might come in and take over. But he does so many things well that you could make a case for Tyler Black in a pretty wide range of leagues, even though there's a lot of ways the playing time could shake out.
Do you know what it's time for?
Would you rather?
No. Build a bench.
Oh, it's back.
Build a bench.
Build a bench usually goes away for April, so I'm glad it's already back in May.
Well, the reason I'm asking is, can you actually keep Jake Bauers on this roster and Tyler Black and Rhys Hoskins? And I'm not suggesting they're going to cut Rhys Hoskins. Hoskins has been fine. Bauers is closer to being cut, so if you're positing sort of Hoskins as the everyday DH, let's put Hoskins as the starter, Ooh.
Yeah, Hoskins is
breaking news. Bradish up to 97 in the first. We're back.
I like that.
Says the tweet from Aspiring Cat.
Aspiring Cat is on the Orioles beat.
No, I don't know. It's just in my Twitter.
What?
We're putting Hoskins at DH.
That's the information going into your gut. Aspiring Cat
coming from Aspiring Cat.
Aspiring Cat gets you velo, but also gets you a lot of other information too.
We're putting Hoskins at the starter at DH. Churio is a starter in right. Frelick is a starter in center. Who's starting in left? Perkins?
Well, Perkins is playing center a lot right now. Frelick's playing left while Yelich is out. Once Yelich comes back, then things shift yet again.
Okay, so we're doing Perkins in center, Frelick in left, Joey Ortiz at third, Adames at short, Turang at second. We'll put Bowers at first just for, or we'll put Tyler Black at first for this.
Yeah.
Contreras, Sanchez. So having done all that, how many spots do we have left?
I think you still got 4 spots on the bench. I think you named 9 starters as I was following.
Well, I also
along.
put Sanchez in, so 3 spots left.
3 left. So that's Bowers for 1 for now.
Well,
Oliver
let's
Dunn.
do Bowers last. So who's the backup center fielder?
Like anybody. You can,
right
you
now it's Frelick.
It's Frelick. It's Churio. They have built-in backups at shortstop and center field that are in the starting lineup.
Okay, who's the 4th outfielder?
Weimer for the moment.
Okay, so there goes one. 2 spots left. Who's the backup shortstop? Joey Ortiz.
Bryce Turang, either one of those guys could be the backup shortstop.
But you need another body. So who's the backup middle infielder or backup infielder?
Oliver Dunn.
Done. So we have 1 spot left. You do have an extra infielder, an extra outfielder. It's just, I guess what their flexibility has done has allowed them to do this, right?
Yeah.
The fact that anybody can play center and anybody can play shortstop, since they have 3 guys who can play shortstop, 3 guys who play center field, the backup just needs to be another body, and then they can shift Turang to short if they don't want to play Dunn at short, or they can shift Churio to center if they don't want to play Weimer in center. So they've got all this flexibility that allows them. So Bowers and Black at first, the loser gets cut when Christian comes back.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Bowers, he's one of the few players on the entire roster that doesn't have options. Everybody else, with the exception of like Willie Adames and Rhys Hoskins and Gary Sanchez, can be optioned.
So Black has to hit.
But they need more from that spot. I think there's a window that's open right now, especially since they need another left-handed bat. Huge for them.
There's some runway, a lovely swinging strike rate, a not so lovely max EV and hard hit rate. He's a little bit more Sal Frelick than anybody.
More in-game speed, though. We've seen some crazy good stolen base numbers from Tyler Black. 47 for 56 last year at AA, 8 for 11 at AAA.
Yeah, it's an interesting player. I think he's a good pickup if you are looking for speed. If you can afford it, it might be worth. Do you think it's worth a 10% bid?
Yeah, I think so. It's a calculated risk, but there's enough ways for it to go right.
You could still use 25 more bags from here on out.
Yeah, and it's with non-zero power, a pretty good approach that should
keep batting
the K rate down, should get on base, could have a prominent spot in the lineup. Like there's just that lineup is so fluid. Anyone producing can move to a prominent spot.
I did have someone put him up against Gleyber Torres, and I'm still keeping Gleyber Torres.
I wouldn't take Tyler Black over Gleyber Torres.
But if you have a need in the middle infield and a need for speed in particular, you should find room for Tyler Black. I agree.
What do you make of Jordan Beck getting an opportunity with the Rockies?
Is he brothers of Tristan Beck?
That I do not know offhand, but big numbers at high A. Took a little step back with the promotion to Double A last year. Hit the ground running at Triple A. Power, speed, much like Tyler Black. Pretty good eye at the plate. Struck out a little more than Black, but a sub 20% K rate at Triple A. That'll work. Age appropriate. Good hard hit rate too. Had a 49.4% hard hit rate early on this year at Triple A. Colorado wide open for opportunities. Chris Bryant nowhere close to returning, among other factors. Do you think this can work?
Does not have the top end raw power. And then, just as I'm picking the nits, despite the decent strikeout rates, the swinging strike rates are higher. We had Joey Loperfido. We were just talking about him. He had a 10% swinging strike rate against a 30% strikeout rate, where Jordan Beck has a 12.9% and a 13.6 and then a Double A 16.1% swinging strike rate for Jordan Beck. So those are higher numbers. It's kind of funny to me that somebody can And it's not like he's a free swinger that is getting to the ball in play before, he walks too. So he looks like Joey Loperfido in terms of walks. He swing and misses more than Joey Loperfido. And for some reason, his strikeout rate is 10 points lower. I tend to actually think these guys will meet in the middle. I think he will strike out more in the major leagues. And I think he'll be a 26, 27% strikeout rate guy. Nice thing about Coors, though, is it's going to inflate your BABIP. And that's something we saw from Jordan Beck at every stop in the minor leagues, too. So if you give him a 320, 330 BABIP, along with a 27% strikeout rate, you can still get to a 250 batting average. This seems like maybe the Nolan Jones package all over again.
Yeah, Nolan Jones' injury is a big part of the reason why Beck's getting this opportunity right now. But similar to what we said about Tyler Black, I think if Jordan Beck plays well, I think he just sticks. I think the other interesting thing that's happening in Colorado, we haven't talked about Brenton Doyle yet this season. Some roto goodness for him to the first month. And the biggest question is really how many more levels can he improve his plate skills? He's got the K rate under 30% right now. I was walking a tick more than last year. He's running a 435 BABIP. Yeah, so if you're looking at that slash line, like, hey, he's hitting 311 with a 360 OBP and a 481 slug. Like, yes, there's some improvement there. I think it's probably more of like a 230, 240, low OBP, good pop sort of profile. It's still, for what you paid, you're still happy with Brenton Doyle, even if that's the player he turns into. Also, center field defense is a huge part of what's going to carry his playing time.
Yeah, as much as I think that Beck might have more true talent power than Doyle and better true talent plate skills than Doyle, I do think that Doyle's defense keeps him on the team. And so while Nolan Jones is gone, I think Beck has that shot. When Jones comes back, you start to look at Charlie Blackmon a little bit.
Right. And they're at the point with Charlie Blackmon, they can play him less. There's no reason at age 37 to just keep throwing Charlie Blackmon out there. Production has not been there so far this year. Quietly had a nice year last year relative to pretty low expectations. But if he's doing what he did last year, he'll stick in the lineup more. If he keeps doing what he's done to the first month, Charlie Blackmon falls into a kind of part-time, I don't know, kind of like the Andrew McCutchen role in Pittsburgh maybe, where it's definitely not a regular and you'd let the other young guys play because you're trying to see what you have in those guys for the future. But I would at least have Jordan Beck on a contingency list where I'm looking for outfield help because I think he'll play enough and offers a few ways to be useful.
The real battle, once everyone's healthy, might be between Beck and Bouchard. And they're really similar. I have to tell you, they're really similar. I'd say there's a little more swing and miss in Bouchard's game. And then Beck has gotten to his power more consistently than Bouchard. It really could just be decided by who's playing better at the time. And right now, Bouchard is not playing well. So Beck, if you want to look at two Fangraphs pages and sort this one out, put Beck and Bouchard up against each other. That's the real battle, I think.
Yeah. Other prospect-related news, Jackson Jobe left Wednesday's start with a leg injury. Severity unknown. He was actually leaving mid-at-bat, so we'll have to see if we get a follow-up on him. Just a heads up in case you're keeping an eye on what Jobe has been up to. Paul Skenes watch. I just saw a note on RotoWire. One more AAA start lined up after 6 scoreless innings with 7 Ks.
Oh! You're saying that they're going to do one more? I think they're done. I think he's up.
Hey, they could just be saying they're giving him one more and then changing their mind, but
that's what you're saying. They said they're going to do one more.
Yeah, currently on track to go Sunday against AAA Buffalo.
Let's do the schedule game. Pirates Sunday against. You're saying what is the date? Sunday. It is the 5th.
Yes,
that's Bailey Falter against Colorado. That was the one that we thought might be home against Colorado. Might be the one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bailey Falter against the Cubs at home.
Yep, May 11th.
11th or 12th.
Fourth time we've moved this back now.
Yeah, but then if they move it beyond that, then they're going to move it all the way to the end of May because I agree with you. I don't think they're going to do it May 16th at the Cubs.
No, do it at home. Pack that place.
Then it's
get a
May
sellout.
22nd against the Giants. But that seems so far out.
Yeah, what are we doing here? Not a thumbs up on that one. Definitely not a thumbs up.
I really, really thought May 5th versus Colorado was the ticket. That is such a soft landing. You're home, Sunday day game. You got Bailey Falter as an insurance blanket.
Well, we're going to try and send a message in division instead.
He's not yet on a 5-day schedule.
I think, well, he just pitched Tuesday, so if he goes Sunday, then he will be on the 5-day schedule.
That'll be the 5-day schedule.
That's the next nudge, right? It's
but then you have no more boxes. You can't be like, well, he hasn't struck 5 people out with his changeup, so we're going to wait until he does that.
Like Panda Watch.
Yeah.
Question for you about Heston Kjerstad, sort of bridging the gap from the rest of Project Prospect to a few more waiver names. What are you doing with him in redraft situations right now? He's playing a lot less than we expected.
Yeah, I have. I've even used the opportunity to trade him in one league, in the keeper league. I traded him along with Keaton Wynn for Pablo Lopez in an auto new league.
I mean, I'm sure there's some salary considerations in there, but that seems like a nice get. Speaking
of schedules, do avert your eyes from Keaton Wynn's coming schedule.
Oh, so that was okay.
What?
Yeah, it's important. It's good to point that out.
Yeah, and maybe sell Keaton Wynn as fast as possible if it's in a redraft league, because he's gonna be a lot harder to sell after he goes to Cincinnati, to Colorado, and then gets the Dodgers at home. May not be great for him.
No, you don't want to use him in any of those spots if you can help it. So
yeah, Kjerstad, I think is a. I was going to put the B word on him just for redraft. Like, just not a guy I want in redrafts right now. They're not playing him consistently. They don't have a plan for him. How do you, as a young player, come in and dominate if you're playing once or every 3 days?
You don't. You really don't. So maybe it's a drop for now, and think about it later if things change on that depth chart in Baltimore. Here's a player we have not talked about yet that has really been causing problems for someone we liked throughout draft season. Wenceel Pérez playing a lot for the Tigers and really kind of pushing Parker Meadows to the side. It's been happening for a few weeks, but I don't know what to make of Pérez. The results in the minors have been interesting at several stops, and he's not the kind of guy that's going to go to the level. A couple of bad stops, but not, I don't know. Like, he's got good plate skills. He's got some power. He's been an efficient base stealer at a few stops in the last 3-4 years in the minors.
Projections like there might have been a swing change in his past, because he went from 50% ground ball rates to 40 and 50% fly ball rates.
Yeah, so I read a few of the scouting reports and tried to figure out what it was that people didn't like about him. He moved off of shortstop, so he was kind of an honorable mention on Keith Law's top 20 for the Tigers.
So people dinged him for not being a shortstop anymore.
No, but he's starting to fit in center field. He switch hits. He does a lot of things we care about well.
This is better than I expected. Like 7.9% swing strike rate is good.
Yeah, I feel like I should have been a little more interested sooner.
Here's something that's not good. 103 max EV, 101 in AAA, and even last year 104.7. So the raw power is not good, but he gets to it some. And a guy with bad raw power trying to get to it in Detroit, that's where you get risky. Look at the projections also. 128 ISO from Zips, 107 from ATC. The bat is a little bit nicer with a 145. But even with a 145 ISO, you're saying like a guy who, if you gave him all season, might be a 15-15 guy or a 15-20 guy.
Yeah, or maybe 10-20, 10-25. Yeah. I think you're looking more speed than power, but it's non-zero pop, even though those underlying numbers aren't great. I'm intrigued. I'm at least thinking about him in the leagues where he's available. There's some deeper leagues I play in. They got a 16-teamer, I think, where he's out there. He's going to get scooped up tonight. I think he's going to be interesting. Also, like him or Wilyer Abreu. It's like, there's something similar to me about like, you can pick the nits and find the flaws, or you can just realize that like they might be good enough to play and they have the opportunity.
and they're maybe like better than league average players with the bat. And in today's league, especially the deeper your leagues are, the more you're like, oh, I could get a guy who's 2010 or 1510 or whatever, like, yeah, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of into it. A little bit of a Lodem guy, I think, at this point, given that there wasn't a lot of prospect hype on Wenceel, Pérez. Are we interested in Nick Senzel? Is this happening again?
I have an ongoing group chat thing with my co-manager in the main event where I keep saying Senzel and he keeps saying no.
It's good to have someone in your life that keeps you from just getting wrecked by the same players.
Like, let's do it. I mean, the 14% barrel rate is great, but he's smaller sample than everybody else. Of course, he's always this.
Yeah, well, yes. His whole career has been a smaller sample than we would like it to be because he's had all sorts of stuff go wrong.
And the top end raw power does not suggest a 14% barrel rate. So I think you have to say, okay, best case scenario, we're getting league average power out of him. With the fact that he hasn't attempted a steal yet and all the injuries, I put that up against the Nationals being one of the most aggressive teams for steals. That's an interesting one. How many steals do you want to give him the rest of the season? Maybe just
projections have 7, 8. Yeah, mid to low single digits is. I'm thinking more. I think the average is light right now. He makes pretty good swing decisions, so maybe the average is a tick light. It's not the volume of playing time.
He's hitting opposite field fly balls right now. That's a little weird.
That's not really going to do much.
No, that's not good. Yeah, I remember the opposite field slugging percentage is 300 and the on fly balls, and the pull is 700.
Is the more interesting pickup in DC Jacob Young, who's now 12 for 13 as a base stealer this season?
Did I read right that he got caught stealing to end the game the other day? That's too bad.
That's a really bad one caught stealing when you were perfect otherwise.
Trying to play. And he might be zero power.
Yeah, that looks like zero power.
Yeah. But he seemingly swum move past Victor Robles, I guess.
Yeah, Vic's hurt right now. Once he's back, that could be a bit of an ongoing battle for playing time between those two. So I've been kind of cautious with Young so far, even in deep leagues, even though I think the speed's legit, it might be short-lived.
I think you're talking about like 3% to 5% bid as like a kind of a streamer speed bat.
Right. And I think I'd still shoot more towards deeper leagues. I don't think you want to try to push him onto like a 12-team league roster or anything like that. Yeah. Low Profito came up earlier in the week. Trey Cabbage is also up for Houston right now. Cabbage is AL only for now, even though he put up some pretty big numbers at AAA last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, he's a kind of a 3 true outcome slugger type in the numbers, but he does have speed. So if you can manage a low batting average, you might be interested in him. But I think you still just have a really crowded Astros roster. Is there some way that he comes out over Singleton? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he has more defensive versatility than Singleton. Singleton at this point is 32 years old. But Singleton seemingly has found something in terms of not striking out as much as he used to. Whether or not that has affected his power output is another question, but there's still a chance for Singleton to like hit 250 with 20 homers. And we look up at the end of the year and be like, wow, Singleton just played all year.
It'd be fun. Be a good story if it actually turned out that way. What's opened the door, unfortunately, is a Chas McCormick injury. There's not actually playing time available
I have
from
so
him.
many Chas McCormicks, and the power hasn't been there this year.
No, and the problem I think with Chas McCormick is if you have him in a 12 and you don't have IL spots, you can look at this start, you can look at the injury and say, do I have to cut him and then try to get him back later? Or is there something in the underlying numbers that should lead us to hold on?
I mean, he's still theoretically a 2020 talent.
Yeah. Tough run so far. 2% barrel rate here through the first 21 games.
That's not good for my main event team.
No, that's the tough cut that I'm thinking about heading into the weekend, and I don't like it because I also have a lot of Chas McCormick on teams. Pitching, I didn't put anyone on the rundown that I actually want to go get right now. It's just,
and this is bad. One of the reasons why, if you've been listening, that like sometimes we don't love doing this episode. If you want to hear how the sausage is made, because we don't want to tell you that you have to go out and get this guy when we don't necessarily think they're very good.
Yeah,
we're just somebody you have to pick up because the schedule says so, or because if you really need speed or whatever, you know.
I think I'm in more like stash mode right now if I can. I know Alek Manoah had 12 Ks last time out at AAA. Still not sure I want to take gamble there. I think I'd be more likely to pick up Christian Scott if I could in the Mets system and just hope that he gets an opportunity, because I think there's a better chance of Scott coming up and having success than Manoah coming back and being the guy that he was before last season. But I think it's more of a stash week as of right now for the pitchers I'm looking at.
But that means that you're doing well, and there's lots of us that are just struggling and need to be streaming or looking. I would say Tyler Anderson at Pittsburgh, home against KC, deserves a little bit of a look. You know, Alex Wood, home against Texas at Seattle. He's throwing like 90 poo right now, but you know, could be what you need in a deeper league. This is the part where, like, you know, you get in trouble. I mean, Alex Wood is in the words of Nick Pollock, a cherry bomb. It can go off in your hands anytime. And Tyler Anderson as well.
Ben Lively against the White Sox maybe as a streamer.
Yeah,
a little scary, but that's the state of pitching.
Yeah,
it's
no. I mean, streaming is hard enough. You know, in most years, and then this year with the injuries and, you know, the offense the way it is. Andrew Haney at Oakland, at Colorado second. So, yeah, you're struggling out there in streaming land. Maybe you just pick up a Ben Brown, who has San Diego at home. It's not a 2-start, but maybe he'll have a 2-start next week. You know, if he's still in the rotation.
Yeah, Cooper Criswell, Bryce Elder. I do think John Means is one of the better pickups in many of my leagues, so he'll probably be someone that gets a little bit more of a bid.
Is kind of interesting to me. He throws 89, and so you'd expect his stuff numbers to be bad, and they are not necessarily. Let me see what I've got here. He has, what is this here? Cooper Criswell overall is a 105 stuff plus and a 116 on the sinker that goes like 89 miles an hour. So there's a little bit more to Cooper Criswell. One thing that is interesting is if you look at the last 7 days, it's a little bit down, 108 on the sinker. Still, isn't that way better than you'd expect for somebody who throws 89, 90?
Yes.
So Cooper Criswell is a model play, you know. You still look at 17% strikeout rate and 5.5% swing strike rate and say, "Hoo boy, I trust the model on this one." But trust but verify, you know, trust but look at the schedule, like trust but, you know, like this is definitely one of those ones where maybe it's just so weird that there's no comps.
Yeah. I think the other names that are kicking around out there are maybe Simeon Woods Richardson with a 2-start week. Jose Budo's got a tough second matchup. He gets the Cardinals first, which is another team that by reputation you wouldn't necessarily target.
Who's the second matchup?
Atlanta's the second one, though.
Oh, is it home at least?
It is. He gets Atlanta at home. He has to go on the road for St. Louis, but that might be more playable.
I'll put Budo with Tyler Anderson, like, you know.
Yeah. It's so hard, man. Every
streamers of the week.
every single week you look like, I don't love it, but I could try. I guess. Just throw this out there. Jeez, you know, you mentioned Trevor, the Nationals, and how good they've been as a pitching staff. Trevor Williams has a 2.27 ERA and a 1.17 WHIP. It's 22 Ks in 31 2/3 innings. 12 walks, like nothing's jumping off the page as a major
supporting
change.
It.
Yeah.
There's zero things supporting it. And so in those cases, I tend to say it's not going to continue.
Yeah, I think it's John Means week, and otherwise you're looking for guys coming off the IL. Frankie Montas could be back, so maybe that's a good way to
stash someone who just went on the IL that you're hoping is for a shorter one, or, you know, check the updates on like a Whitlock or, you know, these guys that are on the IL and see that maybe you can pick somebody up 2 weeks before they're back and stash them.
digging in the corners, I think, is where you're going to be if you're looking for some pitching this weekend. We are going to go on our way out the door. Just a reminder, you can get a subscription to The Athletic at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. You can find me on Twitter at Derek Van Riper. You can find Eno at Eno Saris. You can find the pod at Rates and Barrels. It's going to do it. We're back with you at 1 o'clock Eastern on Friday.
Thanks for listening.